This is Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance at the California Republican Party Convention in the Bay Area. We are joined by Diane Harkey. She is the vice chair of the state's Board of Equalization. As a result of her being vice chair, she is the highest ranking Republican elected official in the state of California. A nice lady from Dana Point.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
How do you feel being the highest ranking Republican elected official in your great state, our great state?
Well, you know, it just kind of indicates how far we have to go yet.
No.
You know, I mean, I'm very, very pleased to be representing California, and to be representing my quarter of the state, which is Orange, Riverside, San Diego, Imperial County, and the bottom portion of San Bernardino, 9.5 million people.
Yeah, when you say your quarter, when you talk California, a quarter is 9.5 million. You went from about, let's say, 500,000 to almost 10 million.
That's true, and you know how much bigger that's bigger than most states.
Oh, well, if 10 million is about the size of Michigan, I believe.
Yes.
So you're essentially representing the state of Michigan. Essentially.
Yes, in California.
In California.
I'm representing Southern California.
You are,
okay?
absolutely. I want to speak about the BOE, and if I may, I want to harken back to 1993 or 4, when I got a notice from the BOE. And the notice said that I was delinquent on some taxes because I had lived in California for 2 weeks in 1991, in another state for 11 months and 2 weeks. I called my BOE representative, and I did owe some money, but you know what? It was a mistake. And my BOE representative helped, and it was resolved. And ever since then, I thought, you know what? The BOE is really there to help its constituents.
We are the only elected tax board in the United States, and that has a real advantage, especially in California where taxes and fees are so high anyway, and so cumbersome, because if you have a dispute, if you have an issue, you know, in tax law, the burden of proof is on the taxpayer. So if there's a dispute, you have to prove it up, and we help. We settled over 400 different cases last year, my first year, helped to reconcile things in the taxpayer's favor over 400 times.
And what I so appreciated about the situation was I was dealt with in a way that I didn't feel like I was a criminal. You know, it was honestly, you know, we all saw how the code was interpreted incorrectly, but it was fine. It was resolved. I paid the small amount and done.
Right. One and done is what you want, and if you have any problems or issues, you should always go to an elected representative. And because we're there to serve, that's really what we do.
So explain that, though, because, you know, on the one hand, you're a decision maker. Cases are before you, but you're also a constituent server. So how do you know?
We do operate in a quasi-judicial capacity. We're the last administrative procedure before a court. Before you have a choice to go to court for taxes, obviously. But what I like to say is in the district, oftentimes it's just honest mistakes. People have made an honest mistake, or they misinterpreted something. We have saved, restaurateurs, car dealers, a variety of things that they'll get into an audit loop or a tax loop that they just can't seem to get relief from. So we'll put it like a new set of eyes. We go out and we look at it from I have a very high professional staff that actually came from within the BOE, the civil service part of the BOE. So they're highly regarded within the civil service, and they will look at the policy and see if there's any flexibility, any wiggle room at all. And if there is, we try to get that in the taxpayer's favor, because most people, 98% of taxes in California are through voluntary compliance. So we have a high rate of compliance.
Speaking of, I recently read an article, and I'm sure you already know this, and it was put up by the Sacramento Bee, and it talked about the percent of taxes. You're looking at the headline with me. Almost half of California's 2014 income taxes were paid by the top 1% of income earners. I don't want to get into a kind of a class warfare discussion. To me, this is troubling, because what if the top 1% start having face tough times?
Well, you know, as we're reading, you know, Silicon Valley is starting to like level out a little bit. And the last time we had a heavy, like a .com bust, the whole state suffered. So we do suffer when the top 1% quit making that 1%.
Well stated. But here's the question, Vice Chair. We've been hearing about a desire, both Democratic and Republican, to reform the tax code in such a way that we aren't so reliant on these types of taxes. I know you're not in the legislature anymore, but as a member of the BOE, can Chairman Horton, can Controller Betty Yee use your bully pulpit, George Runner, all of you, Fiona Ma, to try to talk some sense into those, I mean, I shouldn't say talk sense, but you know what I'm getting at, to really look at the question of our tax code?
Well, we can. Tax code is extremely complex, and the best way, I'm kind of a flat tax proponent with some caveats,
right.
And there's just, it's very complex. It's piled on one thing after another because the legislature legislates, a change here, an increase there. We've got Prop 30 coming back, our temporary tax on the higher income brackets that was supposed to go away, that now is back on the ballot again. I think between the ballot initiatives and the perpetual, what seems to be class warfare that is played, we're going to have a real hard time.
Let me ask you, without getting into the right or wrong of marijuana legalization, we don't need to go there. Let's just presume for argument's sake that come November, marijuana is legalized. What that means is there will be taxes that come in as a result of that legalization.
Most of the taxes will actually be taxes that will go for the medical or the marijuana trust fund, which will not be used for general fund purposes.
Oh, really?
Yes, sales tax, I believe if you can get the sales tax, that still gets distributed to the state and will come back to the counties and the cities. But the bulk of this will go to feed the bureaucracy, and we don't have enough public safety funding. What we're trying to do,
can we put some of this money that's received into public safety?
It's very difficult. What we have is a real difference between what Northern California is legislating, because right now that's the force that's driving, and Southern California actually dealing with it. We have a huge population. I have 9.5 million people in 4 counties. Fiona Ma has, I think, 23 counties with 9.5 million people. George Runner has 30. So they have rural concerns and cultivation in public lands. We have cultivation in internal, in indoor cultivation that will be huge. And we also have a heavy cartel activity because we're close to the border. And we need the public safety funding. We're going to need the security, and that's what I'm fighting for.
I was talking to George Runner, one of your colleagues, and he was telling me that a medical marijuana dispensary came to the BOE with $200,000 in cash to pay their taxes because they had no way to pay it because they had no banking.
Yeah, well, it's because we in California are trying to legalize what the Fed have still determined is an illegal substance.
Yes.
So we can do what we want, but I'm not so sure we'll be able to affect the federal banking regulations which rule our banks. Now, there are some kiosk operations and other things we can do, but until we can get the banking situation, we're going to be laundering money for cartels, is my big fear.
It's problematic.
We do not want that to happen. Our state needs to have an answer to that, a solution to that. I think we can come up with one.
You just left a luncheon where Senator Ted Cruz spoke, presidential candidate, your candidate for president.
Right.
How was it? What did you think of Mr. Cruz? What was the audience reaction?
The audience reaction was very strong. As you know, I have endorsed Ted Cruz. I think that I waited and I vetted the candidates thoroughly. I looked at all of them. And I think that he will do the most to help California in spite of what we do to ourselves. I think just by relieving a little bit of the federal burden, also relieving us of some of the EPA issues that we have with getting water to Southern California.
Well, that's an issue.
Water is a huge issue for us. It's a huge issue for us. And it's not because the state doesn't have the water. We're burgeoning with natural resources, but we can't let all the water go out to the ocean. We have to be able to transport it, be able to do what we need to do here to preserve what we get.
When you come back, maybe we'll talk about Prop 1, which was the water bond, and see how that money can get spent. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Her name is Diane Harkey.
Thank you very much.
She is the Vice Chair of the Board of Equalization. I'm Brad Pomerance from the California Republican Party Convention, Charter Local Edition.
Thank you.